Hello everyone. Let's proceed on to the next chapter 4, Executive of NCERT Class 11 Political Science, and the name of the book is Indian Constitution at Work. Now let's see what is an executive. So every organization is run by some people who caters to who address implementation of decisions. So these executive, which may be called management or administration, it actually runs a system or runs an organization. And now let's look at the highlighted section. So every formal group has a body of those who function as the chief administrators or the executive of the organization. And they may be called managers or CEO, executive officers, and the word executive, it means a body of persons, a group of persons that look after the implementation of rules and regulation in actual practice. So executive is the person who actually execute things, who actually runs the system. And in case of government, one body may take policy decisions and decide about rules of regulation. So this is the work of legislature in government. So legislature itself means rule maker or decision maker. So this is a body. Legislature is a body who makes rules, who makes policy decisions, but they themselves are limited by manpower and personal capacity. So after having those decisions and rules being made, there is a need to implement those decisions, and the other body, executive, it is in charge of implementing those rules. So the organ of government that primarily looks after the function of implementation or administration is called executive. Now let's talk about the principal functions of the executive. Executive is the branch of government that is responsible for implementation of laws and policies adopted by legislature. And uh, as it has been already explained, the government, it is manned by three branches: legislature, executive, and judiciary. So legislature, it make rules; executive, it implement those rules; and judiciary, it resolves disputes that arise from either the rule making itself or the execution of those rules. This is the shortest definition. Now, the executive branch is not just about presidents, prime ministers, and ministers. It is also extend to administrative machinery, civil servants, public servants. So it is because the heads of government and ministers, such as the political executive that is being talked about, so such as ministers and prime ministers, they are already saddled with, they are already burdened with, preoccupied with lot of responsibility, and they are also personally incapacitated. And to make rules and to implement them, that too also in a big country like India, is a Herculean task. So this responsibility of executing them, it is on the shoulders of administration that is manned by permanent executive. So, so this is the general difference between permanent and political executives. So political executives are those persons who are elected by people to run an organization, or here in case to run a government. Now they are in charge of ministries, and they may be known by many names: the Minister of State, Cabinet Minister, Prime Minister, President. But the other, the real executive, or those who implement, permanent executive, it is manned by person who are recruited after examination, such as UPSC and SPSCs. It may include other technical stuff. So On ground level, this includes all the public servant, whether from a particular state or from center or manning any technical division. Then comes the different types of executives. So let's talk about the example from other countries. USA, it has a presidential system that is handed by or manned over by a president. Whereas in Canada, there is a parliamentary democracy in which constitutional monarchy is there, and Queen Elizabeth is the formal head of state, the current monarch, and Prime Minister is the head of government. This is the case of Canada. Now in France, both president and prime minister are part of the same semi-presidential system. The president appoints the prime minister as well as minister but cannot dismiss them as they are responsible to parliament. Japan has a parliamentary system with emperor as the head of the states, same as uh, Queen of England or Queen Elizabeth of Canada. And prime minister is the head of government. The actual power is in hands of prime minister, same as India. Now, Italy has a parliamentary system with the president as the formal head of state and prime minister as the head of government, similar to the condition that existed in India. Russia has a semi-presidential system where president is the head of state and prime minister, who appointed by president, is the head of government. Germany has a parliament system. President is the ceremonial head and chancellor is the head of government. So in a presidential system, president is the head of state as well as head of government, as in case of USA, Brazil, and most Latin American nations. Now look at the flowchart type of executive. Then the first are those executives that man a system that is based on principle of collective leadership, such as in various parliaments, and then the other system that is manned by individual leadership, such as in USA. The now the first one, it is divided into two parts. It is first one is parliamentary and second one is semi-presidential system. So in parliamentary system, parliament is the supreme authority and head of government. It will be run by a prime minister, and prime minister will be a leader of majority party in legislature, and he along with the whole council of minister, it is accountable to the legislature, which means real power is in hands of parliament, and parliament is the miniaturized representation of people, a mini representation of people. So which means prime minister and his council of minister both are responsible to the people. Now in a parliamentary system, a head of state, a ceremonial head of state, head of government, he can be either a monarch, such as in constitutional monarchy, examples of Canada and England, and then he may be a president in case of parliament republic such as India. And in the both case, monarch or president, the head of state, he is a ceremonial figure. It means real power is wielded in the hands of a prime minister. Now let's talk about semi-presidential system, in which president is the head of state as and prime minister which is head of a government. And in this case, prime minister and council both are responsible to the legislature, such as in France. And next come the presidential type of system, in which president is the head of state, he is also the head of government, a dual responsibility, and he is directly elected by people and he is not accountable to the legislature, which is a different branch. Now let's talk about a case of semi-presidential executive in Sri Lanka. So in 1978, Constitution of Sri Lanka it was amended and executive presidency it was introduced. So in this case, the people directly elect the president, and it may happen that both president and prime minister may belong to same party or different ones. And in this case, the president has vast power under the constitution. He chooses the prime minister from the party that has majority, and he also has the power to remove prime minister or ministers. And he's also the head of government. He's elected for 6 years. This case study or particular example, it may be helpful in either prelims or mains. Now let's talk about parliamentary system. So a prime minister is the head of government, and he is also supported by a president or monarch who is nominal head. So nominal here it means he is ceremonial or figurative, uh, which means his duties are either bound by or controlled by Council of Minister. Let's come to parliamentary executive in India. So India has already some experience of running parliamentary system under acts of 1919 and 1935. So both these colonial acts during British India, they were they were bestowed by the British to share governance with Indians. So it was both of them were sharing mechanism so that Indian can be given a place in legislature or the executive functionings. But since Indian has for a long time they have been demanding dominion rights or some sharing or equal representation. So these demands had to be catered by the British. Although both these they were not um, perfect in themselves, but yet after a long struggle, the British they budged and somehow some relaxation were given, which culminated in Government of India 1909, which is known as Parliamentary Reform, followed by another after 10 years, another reform that was known as Montagu-Chelmsford Reward, and then comes Government of India Act 1935. So in all these acts, there was increasing devolution of effective power in the hands of Indians. So and and power that has been gained by Indian, uh, it was it was the fruit of their a long effort, the effort that started long before the establishment of INC, Indian National Congress, in 1885. So after a long struggle, some relaxation had to be given, even though all of this relaxation, um, the actual wielder of power were the British, yet they were manifestation of or the recognition of the efforts that had been put by nationalists. Then, because of the experience by both or all three of them, 1909, 1919, and 1935. So, in all three acts, both provincial and federal legislature have been established. Even though power was wielded by governor and viceroys, yet some representation was given, and because of existence of both federal and provincial legislature, we had an experience of how parliamentary system works. And because of this experience, they knew that the executive can be effectively controlled by a representative of people. And the other alternative to parliamentary executive was presidential form of government. But the in presidential system, the whole authority, the dual role of manning the state and the government both, it was put upon a single personality, and there is always a fear that he may accrue all powers to himself. So there is a danger of personality cult. So, and Indian constitution maker, they were aware of this danger. So to check against the personality cult, they adopted parliamentary form of government. Since in the parliamentary form there are many mechanisms for which the executive it can be held answerable, accountable, and controlled by legislature or people's representative or the people themselves. Then in this system, head of state, uh, the head of nation is a formal figure, a figurative or a ceremonial figure, that is a president and prime minister and council of minister. They actually wield all the power. And same at the state level, the executive comprise the governor and chief minister and council of minister. Uh, in India, there is a vertical devolution of power as well. So the structure of government at union level, it reflects in all the other levels. So since government at the union level, it is manned by executive and council of minister. In the same way, at state level, there is executive, which include both chief minister and governor, and there is a state council of minister, along with existence of state legislature. In the same way, there is a union legislature or parliament, and in the local level as well, there are legislature and executive both. So this is some kind of mirror effect which is reflected throughout the vertical devolution of power. Now, executive power is wielded by president. He is elected for 5 years, and he is elected by elected MLAs and MP. He is not directly elected by people. So this indirect election by the, the electoral collage of elected MLAs of state legislatures and member of parliament of union legislature, and this election, it is done with proportional representation by using single transferable vote. Now he can only be removed by parliament, and this removal is known as impeachment, and there is only one ground, that is violation of constitution. There cannot be any other ground to impeach president of India. Now let's see the article that talks about power and position of president. So there shall be a council of ministers with the prime minister at the head to aid and advise the president. So the first section, it says president, it will be advised and aided by council of minister, which means prime minister and all the ministers. So it also means that president is bound by the advice of council of minister. President had to sign wherever the council of minister says it to be. And sometimes president may require the council of minister to reconsider such advice. So there may come time when president, he can turn down or reconsider the advice tendered by the council of minister. So he has the power to do so. He can send the advice back for reconsideration. So it means he is not a puppet in the hands of council of minister. But constitution, it has also guaranteed the actual power in the council of minister by saying that even after reconsideration, if the council of minister sends a request again, the president, it is bound by that reconsideration. So in the both cases, president is bound by council of minister, council or advice of council of minister. Now he can at for the first time he can send any request back so that it can be reconsidered. But if council of minister passes that resolution or send the request back with or without any reconsideration, then in the second case, president, he is bound by it. He is bound to accept the reconsidered advice of council of minister. Now let's talk about discretionary power of the president. Since prima facie it seems the president is only a rubber stamp or a ceremonial head or a semi-puppet, a toy which can be played on by the council of ministers. But at first we had seen that president can send any request of council of minister to be reconsidered. So that's a big power. So it doesn't appear here in this way that he is totally bound by the advice of council of minister. So he is not a puppet and he is not just a ceremonial. Then he do possess some discretionary powers. First, he has the right to be informed of all important matters and deliberation of council of minister. And prime minister is obliged to furnish all the information that president may call for. It means that the president, he need to be informed and updated about anything that is going in council of minister, and prime minister, he furnishes all the information say whenever president call for it. Now there are three situations where president can exercise his own discretion. First place, when he sends the advice given by council of minister for reconsideration. So even if the council of minister send the same advice back without any changes, without any modification, here in this case president is bound to accept that advice. But since the president has sent the decision to be reconsidered, it naturally carries a lot of weight. So this is first instance of first situation of discretion. Second is he has the veto power. Veto power, which means he can withhold or refuse to give assent to bill. So in parliamentary system, uh, any bill can become a law only after the assent of president. Without his assent, without his signature, no bill can turn into a law. And since he is also bound by the advice of council of minister, so here the principle of checks and balance, it is revealed in full force. That is, even though he is bound by the advice of council of minister, he has been given the power to withhold or refuse to assent a law, refuse to give assent to a law. So these are two power. First, refusal or withhold. So which means first, he can send the bill back just like the advice at in the first instance tendered by the council of minister. So he can send the bill back for reconsideration. And here also, if the council of minister passes the same bill with or without reconsideration, president is bound to give assent to that law. Then comes the stage of withholding. Withholding means to sit upon it. To sit upon it. to do nothing about it. So in this case, Constitution, it has not given any timeline within which a president has to give assent to a particular bill. So in that case, he may not take a decision, but he can sit upon it. So without any time limit, he can use this veto in very effective manner, which is also called as pocket veto, which means a bill that has been passed by Council of Minister, if according to President, if it violates the Constitution, if it is somehow not good in overall welfare of nation, he can put that bill in his pocket, which means he is not going to take any decision anytime soon. And since there is no constitutionally bound time limit within which president has to give assent to a bill, in that case, the bill stays with him as long as he wants. And in that case, it will not become a law. It may be uh, too long before he gives any assent. And since this by this gesture he enjoy and very informal but effective power, it is known as pocket veto. And the third kind of discretion is in political situation, especially to choose the leader of the largest political party in Lok Sabha. So, as we know that Parliament is composed by three elements: Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha, and President. So here, Rajya Sabha, it is indirectly elected by MLAs. Next comes Lok Sabha. Lok Sabha is directly elected by people. So here, the elected representatives are directly facing the country, directly facing the people, and this is how Council of Minister, which includes both Prime Minister and his ministers, come into force. Now, to choose a Prime Minister, it is generally done on the basis of majority, which means whichever party has majority in Lok Sabha, its leader will be appointed as a Prime Minister. Now, there may be situation in which there is no clear-cut majority, or even if there is a clear-cut majority, there is no consensus on who is going to become a prime minister. So in both the cases, when no party has a clear-cut majority, or there is no consensus about who is going to become a prime minister, in both the cases, president can use his discretion in judging who may have the support of majority or who can actually form the government. So there is a case study given here. After 1977, party politics became more competitive. So let's have a brief about from 1952, the first election, to 1964, Nehru was there. From 64 to 66, Shastri was there. And from 67 to 71 and 71 to 77, Indira Gandhi was there. So all in all, from 1952 to 1977, for 25 years, there was stable, there were stable governments. After 1977, there come a brief period from 1977 to 1980, in which the country, it was in political turmoil, because Indira Gandhi, he was ousted of government, so she was the uh, only capable ruler who was uh, able to form a strong leadership. And other than that, other than Indira Gandhi and the Congress which she held, no other strong leadership or no other leader could be seen on horizon. From 1977 to 80, it was a turmoil between leadership of various party, or the confusion regarding the actual leadership between a couple of leaders. Then from 1980 to 84, Indira Gandhi, she again held the force, and she was assassinated in 84, and from 84 to 90 it was period of it was the prime ministership of Rajiv Gandhi. So after 1990s, they came from 89 onwards. Since 1989, they came a new reign of a new rule of coalition governments. So all in all, in a brief period of 10 years, from 1989 to 1999, there were total 13 governments. Now, let's have a look at how a parliamentary system works. So in this system, Council of Minister is dependent upon the support of majority of legislature, which means uh, Council of Minister, she is regulated by and accountable to legislature, the principle which is known as the principle of collective responsibility. And since because of this provision of collective responsibility, Council of Minister can be removed anytime. And this provision does not ensure stable government. It does not ensure that any government that is elected will complete the term. In such a scenario, the nation, it requires a head that is stable. So this situation, it requires a head of the state who has a fixed term, and who may be empowered to appoint prime minister who may symbolically represent the entire country. So this is exactly the role of president in ordinary circumstances. And when no party has a clear leadership, or there are multitude of leadership, or any such scenario in which discretion is needed in the appointment, president's role come into play. Now let's talk about the vice president of India. He is elected for 5 years, and his method of election is similar to president, that is proportional representation. The only difference is that his electoral college, it it does not consist of member of parliament. He is elected indirectly by members of state legislatures only. Then he can be removed from his office by a resolution of Rajya Sabha passed by majority and agreed to by Lok Sabha. And he also acts as ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha. Now let's talk about Prime Minister and Council of Minister. So it is the Prime Minister who decides who will be the ministers in the Council of Ministers. He allocates ranks and portfolio to the ministers. And in the same manner, Chief Minister of State, he chooses ministers from their own rank, which are appointed by governor. And the prime minister or minister, they have to be member of parliament. So they have to be member of either Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. And if someone who becomes a minister or prime minister without being an MP, such person has to get elected to parliament within 6 months. Now the question of size of council of minister comes to factor. So before 91st Amendment Act 2003, the size of Council of Minister, it depended upon the time. So there was not no fixed criteria for how large a Council of Minister can be. But by this particular amendment, 91st Amendment, the Council of Minister, it has to be fixed at 15% of total number of House of People, that is total number of Lok Sabha members. Next comes the principle of collective responsibility. The Council of Ministers is collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. So it means that if a single minister if a ministry loses confidence of Lok Sabha, it is obliged to resign. So, and it also means then a vote of no confidence against a single member leads to the resignation of entire Council of Ministers. Then this Council of Ministers, it exists only because of Prime Minister, and death or resignation of Prime Minister, it automatically brings about dissolution of Council of Ministers. It means Council of Ministers cease to act after death or resignation of the Prime Minister. But demise, dismissal or resignation of a minister only creates a ministerial vacancy. Then the power wielded from Prime Minister, it flows from various sources. First, he controls over the Council of Ministers. Second, he is the leader of Lok Sabha. He commands over the bureaucratic machinery. Then he has to access to media, and he is the persona during election campaigns, and he is also projected as national leader during international summit as well as foreign visits. So these are various sources of the power of Prime Minister, and you can imagine the length and width of his powers. Then, so the situation of a coalition of political party after 1989, I have already delineated the whole list from 1952 onwards from the first election, and many of these governments from 1989 to 1999, in these 10 years there have been 13 governments, but after 99 there have been the scenario like this. From 99 to 2004, BJP government led by Atal Bihari Vajpayee, it was a full-term government. Then came the government of NPA, Congress, which has been in force for 10 years, and then came the rule of NDA government. So after 1999, there has been scenario of coalition-led stable governments. But these 10 years, you can say these 10 years were formative ground for keeping coalition-led stable government. Since it was during this time that many government was shuffled out, and because of this instability, the the people of India, the general people, they learned this lesson that in order for the country to function properly, stable government is needed. And even if they are giving voice to different opinions, they are giving support to different political parties, those political party with similar agenda, they can come together in stable coalitions. So these 10 years were also of coalitions, but such coalitions were unstable. And many of the government that formed that time were were not based on any um similarity of agenda or any common ground. They were formed just to grab power. So the lessons that were learned in those 10 years are coming fruitful now, because after 1999, when such era of unstable coalition ended, we have continuously delivered stable governments and stable government who completed their full terms. Now, then this coalition of unstable governments, it necessitated much more consultation between political party, leading to erosion of prime minister authority. So this is talking about the the power that prime minister wielded during the initial years of Congress rule, the power that was wielded by Nehru, Shastri, Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, and then the power wielded by the current prime minister, is especially the prime minister who came after this this era of unstable political governments or unstable coalition governments. So erosion of political power of prime minister happened the first such instance that these developments or these sequence of these series of unstable government, they resulted in growing discretionary role of president, since it is the president who decides who is going to be the prime minister in case of such a shuffle. Second, in this coalition, there was a lot of intermixing, a lot of negotiations. So, and you can say when negotiations come into play in power, it means power will be shared. In the same way, the coalition government, when different strands of political party, and because of their respective vote share, they themselves, each political party could not form government, so they needed to form coalitions. And coalition of two or more than two parties can only come into force if they agree to common agenda. So it means negotiation. So if consultation and negotiation goes on, prime minister, whoever is going to be prime minister, it will be bound by all the members of the or all different shades of coalition government that has come together. Then the third instance of erosion of power of prime minister is coalition. It also brought restriction on various prerogative of prime minister, like choosing the minister and deciding the rank and portfolio. Now, even after 1999, all these years, they have been coalition governments only. At first, from 1999 to 2004, Atal Bihari Vajpayee government, it was a coalition government known as NDA. And then from 2004 to 2014, it was coalition of progressive section known as United Progressive Alliance, a coalition of Indian National Congress. And after 14 to 24, it was also led by a coalition of BJP government. So all in all, the coalition government, when is each each political party or each major party, it is supported by various stable sections. So even if majority party, it is being led by the support of other parties, and even if the vote secure, the seat secure by the major party, they are greater than the smaller ones. Even in that case, the negotiations and the consultation, it will follow. Otherwise, it will lead to the same scenario that we witnessed before 19 from 1989 to 1999. So to avoid such an instability, right now they are formation of pre-poll alliance. It means such coalition, such alliance, they form before actual election take place. So whoever wins or whoever gets the majority, if even if the coalition is led by a big party, but still supported by many such sections. Now, even if after the polls, this party, the major party, it has secured a lot many seats, or secured a, a majority in itself, majority by itself. The demands of the, the smaller section, or the promise that were made during the pre-poll alliance, they need to be kept. And such coalitional nature, it has clearly eroded the authority of prime minister. And the fourth, that because of this coalitional nature, policies and program right now they are cannot be decided by prime minister alone, since in coalition government different political party or political parties with different ideologies, they come together by either in pre-poll or post-poll alliance, and they put pressure on the government, whichever coalition gets the power, or whichever prime minister is there. He is he wields a lot of tremendous pressure from other sections, so that their demands and their both pre-poll and post-poll promises need to be kept. So right now his authority, it is more like a negotiator than leader of government. And the state level, which is also a mirror of the structure that exists on the union level, governor of state is the executive authority, just like president, and he is appointed by the president on the advice of council of minister. And chief minister, like the prime minister at the union level, he is directly elected by people. In the case of state government, governor has many discretionary power, more than those wielded by the president himself. And let's talk about permanent executive, bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is the administrative machinery which runs the government, and it is manned by trained and skilled officers who work as permanent employee of the government, and they are assigned the task of assisting the ministry in formulating policy and implementing those policies. This is the brief job profile of bureaucrats. Then these administrative officers, they cannot act in violation of policies adopted by the legislature. So they are bound by the decisions and policies that are made by legislature, and legislature itself is the miniaturized representation of the will of people or many people. So these officers, they are bound by people in general, and they are controlled by ministers. Then this machinery, it is also made politically accountable, and along with that fact, it is needed to be politically neutral. So what are both, they both seem contrary. At first, bureaucracy is politically accountable. Politically accountable, it means they are controlled by any government that is at center. Then the government, any government that is at center, it is run by a particular political party. So their decision, their working, it is itself political in nature. But here it means those politically elected, they control the bureaucracy. So their transfer, their working, their decisions, they were all binding upon the bureaucracy. But the decision of bureaucracy, or the steps taken by bureaucracy, they are not bounding upon, they are not binding upon the political leaders. So this is what is meant by being politically accountable. Then being politically neutral, it means that the actual work of bureaucracy, it starts after any political decision has been taken. So after any decision has been taken, uh, bureaucracy is bound to accept it, is bound to implement it, is bound to execute it. But at the political level, bureaucracy should not take any stand. So, if any political party has taken any particular position on any policy matter, this is prerogative of that particular party. It is working of legislature. So here the principle of checks and balance comes in, that talking about policy, taking policy decisions, negotiation, consultation, deliberation, discussion, um, all of such matters, they are under the domain of legislature, that is parliament, parliament at the center. And the job of executive is to execute those decisions. And it is it is violation of this principle of checks and balance when bureaucracy it takes any position on a particular matter against any political party or a political leader. So they need to be apolitical in nature or politically neutral. Then Indian bureaucracy, it consists of all India service, state service, employee of the local government, and technical and managerial staff that runs PSUs, public sector undertakings. Now, the members of all India services, they are recruited by a commission known as Union Public Service Commission, UPSC. The members of UPSC or other state public service commissions, members of all PSCs, they are appointed for a fixed term, and their removal or suspension, it need to be inquired by a judge of Supreme Court. So they cannot be removed just like that. Then the constitution has also provided jobs reservation for SCs and STs, and there are also reservation for women and other backward classes such as OBC, SBCs. Let's talk about classification of civil services. So they are first all India services, which include IAS, IPS. Then there come central services such as Indian Foreign Service, Indian Revenue Service, and other central secretariat services. And the third category is state services such as sales tax officer. All in all, UPSC conducts exam for 24 services. Then the members of all India services such as IAS and IPS officer, they are assigned to a particular state, and they need to work in that state under the supervision of state government, but they are appointed by central government, and central government will effective control on them, that they can be called into the at the union level for deputation, uh, or only the union government or central government can take disciplinary action against them. So this method, it is similar to the position of governor, who is appointed by the central government and works as the agent of government. In the same way, these members of all India services, they are also work as executive agents of the central government, and state government may have some control over them, but the effective ultimate control, it is done by the central government. Then bureaucracy, it is the instrument for by which welfare policies of the government, they are implemented, and sometimes it is believed that bureaucracy is hard to reach. They are not delivering services, they are insensitive to the demand of common people. But at the same time, the bureaucrats themselves, they talk about political interference, and they also talk about the protection from such political interference. And in the end, it is also felt that enough provisions are not there to ensure the accountability of bureaucracy to the citizens. Yes, this dimension is missing all over. Bureaucrats, they are many shades of it. They are good bureaucrats, bad bureaucrats. So good ones, they deliver services. The bad ones, they are insensitive. Then they are political masters, political leaders who sometimes who maintains this balance between interference and execution. Sometimes they are who use these bureaucrats for their personal interests. So all in all, the last thing that is missing is if bureaucrats they can be accountable to people, and if such provisions can be made or implemented, it would be a lot healthier for this democracy and all. Although the bureaucrats they are politically accountable to the Lok Sabha, to the members of Lok Sabha, to the elected people, yet this indirect accountability it should be followed by direct accountability to citizens themselves. Yeah, that's all. And I request you to subscribe this channel so that I keep making these videos. Thank you.